about 2 years ago when Alan McGinley, who's the director of the Westfield Library, he and I were meeting. We were talking about how the Westfield Art Association can collaborate more with the library. And we were talking about going to museums, and I'm very passionate about going to museums and art. And he said, a lot of people come to me and they say they're nervous. They're scared to go to an art museum because they either don't understand art or they don't feel like they're in the right place. And I'm like, that's crazy. They should just go and have a good time. And then I started telling all these ideas, and he said, you should do a talk on that. And that was like 2 years ago. So finally we got it together where I could do it. And we could do this here tonight. The other thing is, I know a bunch of people couldn't make it because it was the end of the summer, so hopefully if you all enjoy this, and I put a feedback list so I can get feedback on how to change things. We might do this again in the winter if people are interested. But anyway, so my name is Darren Owens. I am an artist. That's my artwork. I'm also the current president of the Westfield Art Association. That's how I know some of you. And so we do collaborate with the library on a lot of things. We have artists in residence. We do all kinds of programs with the library. But you'll see tonight, a lot of my focus is going to be on art museums, even though some of the advice I give works at any kind of museum. But I will talk specifically about art museums and big ones, because I think as I talk to people about their experiences at museums, a lot of people say big museums are harder because you get more tired, you don't know what to see, what not to see. So I hopefully give you some ideas about that. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk about museum passes. So I'll get to that in a second. I'm going to give you some tips for what you can do before you even think about going, like as you're planning your visit, that'll make things better once you get there. You may know some of these, you may not know. I'm just hoping that, like this red part at the bottom, if you get one thing from this presentation tonight, I'll be really happy. Like I always say, like if I listen to a podcast or if I go to a presentation and I take away one thing that I actually remember and use, it's a good thing, and I had a good time. So if there's one thing in all these slides that you remember and makes sense and you use, then it's a great night. I'm very happy. And then I'm also going to give you tips for when you're at a museum, how to react to things, how to like look at things, those kind of things. And then I'm going to talk about planned visits versus spontaneous visits, and that it'll make sense when I get to it. And then finally, for any of you who do travel, like overseas or to other states, just some tips about going to museums that are not right around here, because we've done that quite a bit. So, library passes. How many of you live in Westfield? And you all have Westfield cards? Almost everybody, yeah. So the Westfield Library, this is on the website, has a pass. How many of you used the passes? Whoa, that's awesome. That's great. Okay, so you all know this. You can reserve passes online. You have to pick them up in person and return them in person. The great thing about going to a museum on a library pass is it's free, which means you can go in for 10 minutes and leave. Who cares? It's free. You don't have to think, I got to get my money's worth. So, yeah.
And also they treat you as a member.
Right, great point. Because, for example, if there's a member entrance, if there's a member event, you're treated like a member. Yeah, which makes a big difference. Right. Yep. Great point. Oh, by the way, if you have any questions or comments, just feel free to jump in. Like, this isn't that formal, so anything you want to say. These are all the museums that the library has passes to. So I think there's, I forget how many, I wrote it down, 27 museums. More than half of them are art museums, but some of my advice would apply even if you're going to something like the Botanical Garden or something like that. That's not a strict art museum. But mostly I'm going to focus on art museums or those kind of things, just because that's kind of my background. All right, so general advice, and hopefully this will make a lot of sense to you all. By the way, that's my wife in the picture, so sorry. She's going to get embarrassed. So here's some main tips. These seem very obvious, but I think people sometimes don't think about them enough. Be comfortable, because museum people, the number one thing when I ask people about museums is they say, I get tired. It's a tiring day. It's a long day. So think of things like this. First of all, dress comfortably. That's really important. Like This is our oldest daughter going up the stairs in a museum. She's got sneakers and jeans and relaxed, you know. That's more important than looking the part at a museum, at least in my opinion. You want to be comfortable. Lockers are available in a lot of museums where they just give you a key or a combination. Or there's coat checks. I say put anything you're carrying, especially in the winter, if you have a big coat, put it away. It just makes your whole visit a lot better. Put away as much of your stuff as you can. Maybe even your phone, but we'll get to that. Sit down and relax often. So that's a real big one. One thing, I just went to the Princeton Museum, which is beautiful and fantastic, but they don't have enough seating, in my opinion. Like, if you walk around there, there's not enough seating. There's not enough place for you to just sit down and relax. No, but that's a good point. I should tell them that. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, because they do amend.
Yeah, because they just opened
Yeah.
relatively recently, so.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful museum. So if you haven't been to since it's reopened, it's fantastic and free. And then also visit the museum cafe in the middle of your stay for like a drink or a coffee or a snack or whatever. You know, monitor how you feel. And most of the museums we've been to have nice cafes. And even if they're not nice, like fancy, the food's good, and you can get a coffee, you can get a soda, you can get a beer, you can do whatever you want. And it really makes the day more enjoyable. And you can split things up, and you can say, okay, now I'm gonna go see something else after you've kind of rejuvenated. So that's the be comfortable.
And that was the Princeton Museum of Art you're talking about?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, Princeton University Museum of Art. It's like right in the middle of the university. Yeah.
I wear comfortable shoes and all that, but I noticed in the museum, they call it museum back, stop, start, hard floor, that's where you get fatigued
Yeah.
more than anything.
Yep, you're back, because you're standing in a weird position all the time for long periods of time, yeah. So that's why I say sit down, or even like squat down and stretch. Or you may look weird, but who cares? You're gonna feel better at the end. You know, remember your comfort, while you're there. My wife will remember this. I even get down, like at some museums, I'll get down and look at the artwork from low, because you get a different viewpoint of the artwork. And it also stretches you out while you're down there, so as long as you can get back up. So that's a great point. And I think just taking a break or taking shorter visits, which is another thing I recommend, is especially with passes, you can go once a month if you have the time instead of trying to spend 4 or 5 hours at a museum. So in terms of avoid the crowds, this is another thing when I ask people what do they dislike about museums, it's the crowds. You always hear that. You hear lines to get in. Now if you have member passes, you don't have to worry about that, or you just have a shorter line for the members. Or just crowds in general, because some museums, no matter what you do, there's going to be crowds. Like we went to the Vatican museums last summer. We were in Italy, and it was absurdly crowded. It was like disappointing to me. It was that crowded. It was torture. But some ways to avoid the crowds, and we did this. This, for example, is a picture of the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. This is my photo. All these are, everyone in here except for 1 or 2 are my photos. So we took this when we went in. We booked a 9 a.m. entry. It opened at 9 o'clock. And when we went in at 9, we went right to the big, that's Rembrandt's Night Watch. So we went right to the big ones. There was barely anybody there. By 10 a.m., you couldn't even get close to them. There were so many people. So book an early start. The other thing too, the museum will tell you, either when you're there, you can ask them or call them in advance and say, what's the best time to go? What's the best day to go? Like for example, we'll talk about shows, like the Raphael show that was at the Met. Call the museum and say to them, hey, what days are busy? Which days are less busy? Which times of days are less busy? They'll be happy to tell you that. They use the resources that they give you. And then this is kind of a controversial one, but we've done this. If there's a popular show on view, go somewhere else, right? If everybody's going to see the Raphael, go to another part of the Met, and go see something else. We went to a members' night, my wife and my son and I, at the Met, and they had Caspar David Friedrich show. And we went in, we couldn't even see the art. There were so many people. So we just walked out. We went to the Egyptian area where all that stuff, there was nobody there. And it was great. We had a really good time looking at that and reading about stuff that normally there would have been a bunch of people we had no plan. We just ended up there. So that's another thing to avoid the crowds. Now this is the most important. I'm going to say this a lot, but don't try to see everything. All these museums, even the smaller museums, have a wealth of riches. So don't try to see everything. See a few things. I'm going to give you some ideas on what to look at and how to look at things, but don't try to see every single thing. So here's an anecdote that I just wanted to tell you a little story, and this might help. So our youngest daughter was a senior in high school, and she was taking AP Literature. And the teacher said, oh, there's an exhibit at the Met where they have all these posters that were painted during the Art Nouveau movement in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And it's a great exhibit, and it advertises books. That's what they used to do to advertise books. They would hire artists to paint them. So like Muha, you remember the artist Muha, Alphonse Muha? Art Nouveau, he painted some of these. And so this class took a trip to the Met, and they went in, and the teacher decided that since they were at the Met, they should see the most popular things. So she made sure all the class was together, and they went in, she's like, oh, there's, the death of Socrates, and let's go to the next room. And so they spent the whole class trip running around the museum, and they looked at this for about 5 minutes. And so she came home with one of her friends and was really upset. So I ended up taking them the next weekend, and we went to see this. It was a small exhibit. It was like not much bigger than this room, but they looked at all the posters, they read all the things, and it was just so much more meaningful. Like if that class had just done that, just stood in that area, it would have meant a lot more to the kids, I think. So, yeah, it's part of the teacher's problem. Okay, so some advice for reading the labels. The labels have great information, but a lot of the curators at museums are very intellectual and they're very good writers, so they like to write a lot of information. So some advice that I've read, and I think this really makes sense, is the middle one here. When you come up to a piece of artwork, look at the artwork first before you read it. Just look at it, see, what do you see? How does it make you feel? What are the colors? What are the images? Do you like it? Do you not like it? And then read about it. And you might change how you look at it, you might change your opinion, or it might just give you more information. But I think that's better than looking at it and then trying to look for what somebody just told you to look at. Experience it for yourself, right?
Some can have QR codes by the labels.
Yeah, that's a whole nother.
Right.
I don't like that, but that's kind of like cute. If you're reading like a digital book and then going online to look up the word, I hate that.
Well, I was at the Bruce Springsteen Museum, and the labels, the font was so small, I told the docent there, I said, nobody can read these, who's over
Yeah.
40.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too. They'll put these, usually it's mostly on the right-hand side, but they're really small, and like people are so crowded, you can't even get to them. But I mean, you probably all know this, but don't worry about it. You don't have to read everything. I mean, sometimes you like to read it to see when it was made or how, what it was made of. Is it oil paint? Is it not? Yeah.
There's actually an app. Have you ever heard of ArtScan?
No.
No.
There's an app, and I think you might have to be a member and pay something for it, but you can go to a museum. If you take a picture of it, it will tell you what that is and give you the history of it. You can look at it later if you want to, or while you're there, read it and not have to look at that.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool.
Audio guides sometimes
Yes.
Sure.
give you this information.
Yeah.
You don't
And-
have to worry about.
Yeah, and I'm going to get to audio guides too, because that's another thing. The one thing I would like to point out is you'll see this in a lot of, especially special exhibitions. They have a bunch of words before you even go into the gallery. That'll give you a lot of context on what's in there, especially if it's different artists' work, like how that relates to Manet or whatever, when you're going in there. So those are really good to read, but you don't have to. I mean, don't feel bad you're not reading everything or not seeing everything. That's the whole point of this. All right, so taking photos. First of all, like everything in here, I've taken a photo of. So I take photos in museums all the time. And I actually think this one is hilarious. Like she's posting, she's having her friend take a picture and she's gonna post this. It's great, she's having a good time, she's enjoying art. That's great. What I worry about sometimes, and I don't know if you all experience this in a museum, is this is what people do. They have their phones and there's a line. People go up and they go, choop, and they walk away. And then the next person goes and goes, choop, and they walk away. So they don't really look at the artwork. They're up there to take a photo and then move on. Like, so that, you know, I worry about that kind of thing. Like, just, you know, be careful when you're taking photos. And then some advice if you do take photos, because I've experienced this issue. I'll take a photo of a painting I really love, and without the app, I go back later, I'm like, well, who painted that? Or where was that? And what, you know, so what I do is I take a picture of something I like, and then I take a picture of the label right after it, so it's right there. So that's, yeah.
I take a picture of, I do exactly what you do, but I make sure that the part with the explanation is next to the painting. So I take a second
Yeah.
picture of a painting.
That's a good idea. You can
Read
blow it up
later,
and read
blow
it.
up.
Yeah, that's great. The other thing about taking pictures is sometimes it's great to take pictures of people looking at the art. And the reason is you get you get an image of the size of the piece and the scale. So that's, you know, it makes me, oh, it's these people I don't know, but it's okay. I mean, I think it's good for looking at it later. All right, so now I want you to just think about, there's a podcast I listen to. It's actually called What is a Painting? That's way too nerdy for anybody here to think about. But if you look at these are from the website where both of these paintings are. And it's a digital image of these two pieces of artwork. So you say, okay, that's a horse on the left with no background, and that's a painting of a girl. That's great, you know, and they're really, you could blow it up, you can look at it, it's amazing. But when you go to a museum, it's totally different. If you think about it, the horse picture is called Whistle Jacket. It's 10 feet high and 8 feet wide. So you can imagine if you're in a museum and you're standing as close as she is, what that is going to look like. It looks like a real horse, and if you're that close, you can feel, you can see every little vein on the legs, and it really, the impact of no background is amazing when you see it in person. We just saw this in April. It's in the National Gallery in London. But it's just amazing to see this in person. Also, it's a thing. That's another thing to remember when you see anything in a museum. It's an actual object, right? It's not just a digital image. So that painting was painted in 1762. It's older than the US, right? And it's an actual thing. It's a painting on canvas that's sitting in it's got a backing on it, a support, it's got a frame. It's a real thing. It's not just an image. That's what's different when you're at a museum, when you see that for real. And then the one on the right, Girl with a Pearl Earring by Johannes Vermeer, that's even older, 100 years older. And then you can look at that room, that's very typical for famous paintings. Like if you go try to see the Mona Lisa, right, at the Louvre, the room's gonna be 10 times more crowded than that, right? But also, it's 17 inches high and 15 inches wide. So it's tiny, it's like smaller than those or about that size. So you're going up to see, if you wanna see that painting, you gotta wait a long time till people clear out to where you can go up and see it. If you can even see it at all. And that's one of those ones where people line up, they take a picture, they go, they line up, they take a picture. So,
What museum is that?
what's that? The Girl with the Pearl Earring, that's in the Moritz Suites, which is in The Hague in the Netherlands. A tiny museum, but really, really good. Yeah. Tiny's better too, I think. Audio guides, to go to your point. So, a lot of museums have free audio guides. Some you have to pay for in advance. And so I suggest if you're reserving tickets in advance, if you're paying for tickets, pay for the audio guide in advance. Or you can just do it when you get there. There are also either on the website of the museum itself or on Bloomberg Connects has audio guides on for a lot of the museums. So you can look at that all in advance, download those, have them on your phone when you get in there in case the Wi-Fi is not that great when you get there. Don't forget to bring your headphones. And then just like the labels, don't be a slave to the audio. The audio provides great stories and great background to all the paintings, but don't feel like you have to do every one. Like I'm gonna talk about it later, but if you walk in a room and you see a painting, you say, wow, that's awesome, and it has a little audio thing on it, listen to the audio. But if you see one that's like, don't feel forced to listen to the audio, because it's like everything else. You only have a certain amount of time. All right, and then the last for get a guided tour. Like in this example, the people with the flags are doing tours. A lot of museums, you can get a tour, you can sign up that day, or they'll say, oh, at 1 o'clock, somebody's gonna give a tour. They're fantastic. You know, usually they'll pick 2, 3, 4 pieces and just go over them in a lot of detail. And so it's better than having to walk all over the place, but they know a lot of stuff. So that's really great. This is School of Athens by Raphael in the Vatican Museum, by the way, which is it's a painting on a wall. It's not an actual painting. So, all right, planned visit versus spontaneous visit. So by a planned visit, what I mean by that is you think about it in advance. You say, here's my goal when I go. This is for you, like type A planner people. Like you're gonna plan out your whole visit. And I'll give you something that a thing I did. So this is a book on Gustave Courbet. He's a French artist from the 1800s. I got this from the library. So one time I got this, I just read about him. I didn't know anything about him. I read about him. And then I looked in the back, all the color plates that were in the Met. So I looked at them, I read about each one, and then I went to the Met a couple weeks later, and all I did was look at Courbet. He has like, I don't know, 9 or 10 paintings at the Met, and that's all I did. And then I left. But that visit was fantastic. Like, for example, this painting, which is Courbet, one of those girls is his sister. And he would paint her in a lot of his paintings, just because he had a model that he could, I don't know, bribe or beg to model. Yeah, or boss around, yep. So, I mean, that's another way of approaching a giant museum. Pick one artist. Pick Monet, pick Van Gogh, pick whoever you want, and just go see that. Don't go see anything else. You get a lot out of it, more than trying to like rush around and see all kinds of things. Plus, it's kind of fun. Like Courbet, his pieces were in a bunch of different galleries. So I'm like looking on the app, like which gallery, which way do I go for this gallery, and so that was fun. Special exhibitions. I wish I had the miracle answer for how to not be not have visit a crowd. One thing, when I saw the Raphael exhibit, I did ask the Met when it was the least crowded, and they said Mondays at opening, and that's when I went, and it was fine. I mean, for a Raphael exhibit, it was towards the end. It was great. I got to go up and look at all the drawings. The other thing, and I would advise you, what people do is they walk in, most people are right-handed, they start on the left side of the room, then they look at each one in succession, and they follow the little path that's been created for you. If you walk in a room and there's a line over here and those paintings are open, go to the ones that are open and go see them on your own. I mean, that's the way to, I mean, it sounds silly and it's common, but people want to get them in order. It doesn't really matter. So I guess that's the way, some good advice. So here's another thing, look at one piece of art. And so, I don't know, how many of you know about the New York Times Challenge? Yeah, okay, so starting during the pandemic, I think it was either 2021 or 2022, the New York Times would put in one piece of art. This is the actual hard copy, which came out a couple months ago. They would say, here's the piece of art for the week or month, and look at it for 10 minutes. So one piece of art, look at it for 10 minutes and try to do it. And then, afterward, they have questions about it. What did you see in this? Why is this in here? That kind of thing. And so the idea is to slow down and look at one piece. Now, I know, Jane, you sent me that article where it said, look at one piece for 3 hours, which I was like, I can't even imagine. Although, this picture I put up here, this is at the New York Hispanic Society, which if you ever get a chance to go there, it's free. It's in like the 150s in New York. And this is Sorolla. So if any of you know who that artist is, Joaquin Sorolla, he was a master of light. And he painted, it's bigger than this room, and it's murals around the entire room of life in Spain. And so each mural, this is one particular mural on the right, and you just look at the lighting, and this is, compared to seeing it in person, it's terrible. But you look at what you see, and you see the sea, and the beach, and the people, and all this stuff going on, and you bounce from face to face, and what are they doing? They have fish. And then when you go up close, like you can see, now being an artist, I look at stuff like this, these are huge globs of paint that are, and when you're in there, they're like 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch off the wall of paint. like huge globs of paint for all the lights, all the white colors, right? And to see, like, you hear this, like, when you go to art classes, they're like, your darks, your shadows should be thin, and your lights should be thick. And you're like, okay, what does that mean? But then when you see it, like these, you can see the canvas through the dark, right? And here, it's like a huge, thick white thing. And the other thing is, he gets these gills, it's like one stroke of a paint. He's got a boatload of paint on there, and he just goes whoosh. And so it's really cool to see something. Now that is it's probably a foot across in a room this big. So obviously you're looking at the piece for a long period of time. I was in that room for over an hour. And then I started talking to the guy, the security guard, and because I think maybe 3 or 4 people came in while I was in there for the whole hour. And the security guard he says, oh, you're a painter, aren't you? And I go, how do you know? He goes, well, you've been in here an hour and you took like 30 photos, so I'm sure you're a painter.
Either that or you're casing the place.
Oh, golly.
Yeah. But if you do get a chance, like if you get the Times and you want to look up that New York Times challenge, or if you just want to Google it, they do give you pieces of artwork and then they give you questions afterward, which is kind of cool to look at. And somebody, gave me this one, which was so nice of him, and I can't remember his name. I met him at the library and he gave me this one. And so, all right, here's another idea which you might want to try out sometime. Look at one type of art. And the reason I'm put this up, this is the Ghent altarpiece. So an altarpiece is basically a piece of artwork that went on an altar in a church, and most of the time it's closed. So these are levers, and these doors actually close. And on the back side, it's black and white, or grisaille for those artists here. It's black and white, so it's boring. Well, it's really nice, but it's not super colorful. And then what they did was on the holidays, they would open up either the top, or if it was like Easter, they'd open the entire thing. So think about your congregation, you're coming in, and all of a sudden this black and white thing is huge. This is like 15 feet across, and colorful. That makes a big deal, a big difference. So when I learned about this altarpiece, I said, hey, when I go to the Met next time, I'm gonna go look at altarpieces, because now I know what they are. And they have a huge collection of them, and when you know what they are, and you know how they close, and you get to, the Met has them displayed where you can walk around the back and see the back of them. It really makes it so much more interesting to understand what you're looking at and what it was used for. Or you can pick the Impressionist paintings. Go to the Met and see the Impression. I keep saying the Met, but you can go anywhere. Or pastel paintings. I was taking a pastel class and I knew nothing about pastel. So when I went to the Met one time, I said, I'm gonna just look at a bunch of pastels. And yeah, it was really meaningful. And then I couldn't figure out why they were so dimly lit, all the pastels. Like if you go to a museum and you see a painting that's not super bright, it's usually a pastel. And it has something to do with the way the paper degrades based on light. So I don't know if anybody knows more details than that, but yeah, that's why they're dim. And in fact, in the Met, there's one room where they're mostly pastels, and that's a very dim room. So like Degas, those type of pastels. Okay, so here's another museum anecdote. And this one's about my son's visit. He was taking an art history class, and they had to pick a museum and then pick one painting that they would go look at and really focus on and write about and really look at for a long period of time. So I suggested, since he was going to Rowan University in South Jersey, we meet at the Philadelphia Museum, and then he go look at the Moorish Chief, which is this painting on the left, which a bunch of people say is by far the best painting in the Philadelphia Museum. Now that's always an argument, but it's fantastic. If you ever get a chance to see it, it's huge, it's bigger than life size, and it's just incredible. And so when we went, we got there a little earlier than he did, and he was finding parking, and we noticed there was a surrealism exhibit at that time about dreams. And we went in and we just walked around, and I said, wow, Max would love this. This is really cool. So when he got there, he went in and he was looking around, and he ended up picking that painting on the right as the one to focus on. It just called to him, right? It called to you? Max is here. So, yeah, and it's if you look at it, it's amazing. I never knew what that was. I never heard of the artist. I mean, she's collecting stars from the sky, right, and grinding them up and feeding them to the moon, who she's keeping in a cage. Like, I mean, it's awesome. Like, when you see it in person, it's fantastic. And it is really surreal and beautiful. And I never even knew it existed. And we just happened to, we were there early. So we walked in and so it's amazing what you can find in a museum when you go look. So now I'm talking about spontaneous visits. So for those of you who like to live on a whim, walk down the street and say, oh, I'm going to go in this museum today, or, first I'd say get a museum pass, but then if you want to go in, when you walk in a room, this is good advice. Go pick something that catches your eye. So look at whatever painting talks to you. Don't feel like you have to go see whatever, Botticelli or Raphael or whatever. Like, if something you like it, go look at it and figure out that's what it's for. And these artists are all amazing. Like, think about these people that are in these museums. They're incredible. That's one thing my wife and I say a lot when we go to these museums and we look at these pieces that are just incredible, and we've never heard of these people. We're like, I've never heard of this. I don't know who this is. And you look them up later, and they were great artists in their time, but you never hear of them. You're like, so why is Van Gogh or Monet, why are they more famous than everybody else? I don't know the answer. I'm just saying, but the point is, go to what catches your eye. And I took a picture of this guy because this was in the Caspar David Friedrich exhibit again at the Met. He stood in front of that painting for like 5 minutes and didn't move. And I was like, man, that guy is having a good time. And I took a picture. I really appreciated that he was, really enjoying what he saw. All right, so here's another one. If you're going to a museum, especially a big museum, they have exhibits all the time, and you haven't heard of them. So I was at the Met I forget, I was going somewhere in the city, so I went. I'm a member, so I just go whenever I'm in the city. And so this was a curated exhibit. John Wilson, he was a teacher, and he was in Boston. He was at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And it turns out he was a really famous artist from like the 40s to maybe the 80s. He did I think he did a sculpture and a painting of Martin Luther King that are at the National Portrait Gallery in Washington. But I knew nothing. I didn't even know who this was. And I went in, and I could not believe the drawings. This guy was incredible. And I was just blown away. And I spent my whole day in that exhibit. And so my point is, like, who knows? Go look at what, these things are curated, and they bring art from all over the world usually to put them together for one thing. When I went to the Raphael exhibit, there was a drawing that he had sent to Albrecht Dürer, Albrecht Dürer was a German artist, really famous etcher and artist. And Raphael sent it to him in Germany, and he wrote on it, and they had it up on the wall. So Albrecht Dürer had drawn, he said, oh, from Raphael, da-da-da-da-da, look at this. And it's just like, you think of this crazy thing. It's a physical thing that they had back in that time. So here's another one. I was at the Met, and it was like super crowded, and they had this samurai exhibit, and it was mostly sword hilts, like the little things that keeps your hand from getting cut off when you're in a sword battle. And they had special swords, they had sketchbooks. This was awesome. And the whole time I was in there was no one in there with me. No one in the entire room. And it was just really fun because I had no plans to see it, and I really learned a lot, and I really enjoyed it. So another thing to consider. For all you artists, consider sketching one of the paintings while you're in there, or a sculpture. There is no way, I'm biased, but I don't think there's any better way to view a painting than to try to reproduce it. Either to sketch it, or like both of these are paintings I did that are master copies. So I saw those paintings and I tried to paint them. So now I know a lot about those paintings that I wouldn't if I just saw it in a museum. If you sit and sketch, you're going to really see things in a different way. Okay. Advice for museums for kids. If anybody doesn't have kids or they don't want to take kids to a museum, you might want to forget this. But I wrote, and not just for kids, because there's some really cool things. The museum material now for kids is fantastic. Like MoMA is a good example. MoMA has like scavenger hunts and trails of look for this shape, look for this is what this means. And they do it by age of the kid. And like I was printing them out, I'm saying next time I go to MoMA, I'm going to use these because it makes you look at things in a different way. So it's not just for kids. Audio guides, for those of you, you'd have to know your kids whether they could do it or not. Now this picture is my son and my daughter, 11 and 9, and we were in some museum in Italy, and they both have audio guides on. They don't look that bored, right? Like, and they've been into a lot of museums. Yeah. I won't tell you what he said when we went into one church when we were in Italy, but it was very funny. The other thing too, if you have budding artists, or even if you don't, have them sketch or just draw some of the things they see. Actually, my wife and I when we were in the Netherlands, we went to a museum and they had 2 class trips there, and they were all sitting in front of paintings sketching. And they weren't art, I mean, you could kind of tell, but they weren't really artists, but they were just sketching what they saw. Maybe they were, I don't know. But it was really cool to see them focusing on one painting and doing all that sketching. And then these are some questions like maybe you already do this, but stepping back and saying, okay, how does that make me feel? Like I go into some modern art museums because I don't understand abstract art, and I'll go like, what? It makes no sense. I went to the Newark Museum of Art with the museum pass with one of my fellow artists, Rich Cochia, and I went there. They know Rich because we paint together. So Rich and I went to the Newark Museum about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was hysterical because we would go into a room and Rich would go, "What is that?" You know, like, and so you know how you feel, and don't be afraid to feel that way or to say how you feel. It's more fun when you're with a friend, because my wife and I do that sometimes. We'll say like, why is this in a museum? But also, what do you like and what do you not like? You know, there's nothing wrong with liking something that's weird or different. I mean, it's who you are. And then for kids, just like for you, make sure you monitor their energy, their food, their water. They need a break as much as you do. Probably you'll need a bigger break. Okay, so traveling to museums. We're very lucky to be able to travel, and I'm very lucky. My wife lets me go to museums everywhere we go, and she likes them too. This is me in front of my favorite painting. It's called The Lady of Shalott. It's by John William Waterhouse. By far, it's my favorite painting, and it's awesome. So when we went to, this is at the Tate Britain in London, and when we went to the Tate Britain, we had never been there before. I don't know if I'll ever get there again. We didn't go to the whole museum. We were in 2 rooms. We were there for, 3.5, 4 hours. And we went to 2 rooms. And I would say 90% of the time we were in this room. So there's this painting, and there's also John Singer Sargent. It's called Carnation, Lily, Lily, Rose, which is a beautiful painting of his neighbor's kids with those Japanese lanterns, and it's absolutely beautiful. It took him 2 years to paint. He painted for like 5 to 10 minutes a day when the lighting was exactly right, and he did it for 2 summers in a row. So. But to see that in person and to see this in person was just, it's amazing. You can't even describe, even if you get a good image online, the difference between looking at a painting in person. And like if you see in here, there's a candle where the light is blowing out, the candle's being blown out because she's gonna die. That's the story, and to see that in person, it like makes you feel like what that represents. Like, oh my, she's gonna die. Like she looks sad, and when you see her, she looks sad, but then you step back and you're like, whoa, that's really incredible. So in terms of traveling to museums, plan ahead. A lot of museums book up, you gotta book online, and they book up months in advance. Some of them you gotta, Vatican Museums is a good example. Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. There's a bunch where if you don't book when they first open, you're not gonna get in. And then the other thing, pick some smaller museums that people haven't heard of. We went to a couple museums in different towns, where we've traveled in the Netherlands and England, and they were fantastic. And we saw incredible artworks where you can go right up to them. There's nobody in the museum. You go right up to the artwork, and it's not like battling the crowds of everywhere else. So, pick a smaller museum. And then if you're at a brand new museum, ask the staff. That's what they're there for. Ask them what's the best thing to see. And then, have any of you heard of Atlas Obscura? Yeah. So it's an online, it started as a book, but it talks about what's the best way to describe it? It's like off the beaten path things in all different towns and cities. And when you look that up, if you're going to a city, you can be going to Baltimore. You can say Atlas Obscura, Baltimore, and it'll say like, oh, if you go to this place, you'll see this mural on the wall, and it's painted this and all that. And you see some of the coolest things that they'll point you to. We've done that a few times in cities where we'll just go to some random place that Atlas Obscura said to go, and it was
Is it international?
fantastic.
Is it just in the
Yes.
US?
No, it's international. Yep. There was one, I forget where we were, and there was a town, and on the buildings they had these math problems. And it was just randomly around the town. And like you would never see it, but I read about it in Atlas Obscura, and then we did like a little map tour. You know, I would put it in my phone, and we'd go and see these math. It was so cool. I thought it was really cool. So, and my wife was a math major, so it was really cool. And then for big museums, especially when you travel, go see the thing you want to go that you went there for first. Even though nobody should go see the Mona Lisa, like if you're gonna see the Mona Lisa, go there first, because it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a nightmare, but you want to see it. Like, get it done. Go, move on. I mean, it's a shame the Mona Lisa. You have to stand like this far away because of the glass and everything, and it's a small painting. But that's one of the keys for traveling. There's so much I could talk about for traveling to museums. But does anybody have any other questions about traveling? Yeah.
I guess I would just add, like, sometimes it's good to just think about estates that aren't necessarily, like Kentwood, right? You've been there?
No.
England?
No.
So, so Kentwood is a great estate. I have cousins that live like 20 minutes away, so we always go there. But they even have like a Vermeer. I mean, they have some quite incredible pieces. So sometimes it's good just to like be aware of that too. And it's so not busy, like absolutely not.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, my wife and I went to this museum. It's called Kroner Mueller Museum in the Netherlands, and it's in the middle of a national park, and it's really hard to get to. They actually they let you take bikes for free, and you can bike around the park. But they have the second biggest collection of Van Goghs in the world, and there's no one there. And you just go up to these, you can go up to all these Van Goghs and see them. And they also have a huge sculpture garden outside. You can walk around it's beautiful. It's just, but yeah, that's a good point. And when we were in London, we were in some random hotel. I don't know London very well, but there was a collection, and it was another free museum, and we went in because it was like 5 minutes from our hotel, and it was great. We spent like half the day there, and they had all kinds of fancy stuff, beautiful things, and yeah, I mean, do a little research. It's worth it.
There's, I don't remember the name, it was one of these manor houses up in the Berkshires, and they had lots of drawings and some paintings, and John Singer Sargent was one of my favorites. And like, that was kind of more interesting than, 19th century rich man's, furniture or something, and that I just happened to, stumble into it, So I guess the research, you might find those kind of places too.
Yeah,
You
and
can see.
yeah, that's a great point. Like doing a little research of where you're headed, even if you're not going to go to an art museum, just put it in, or put in Atlas Obscura. There's really cool stuff, not just art related, in Atlas Obscura.
The other thing you can do sometimes is walk into galleries, like art galleries.
Yeah, good point.
I was in Lyon, and we saw a poster, and I was really attracted to the poster, so we hunted down the art gallery and just kind of went in, looked at things, and then I said, "Oh, are you selling the poster of the thing which I bought?"
Oh, that's
and
great.
I can show it to you someday.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
But
thanks.
those you just kind of, and there was nobody else in the gallery but us.
Yeah, that's a good point, because like think about New York. Think about how many galleries are in New York, and you don't have to buy anything. I mean, most of us aren't going to buy anything in a gallery in New York. So, yeah, but you could go in. I mean, sometimes people ask you, but I mean, we've done it, and most times they just, they'll talk to you, and then you say, "Oh, I'm an artist," and it gets a whole nother conversation going. So that's about all I had, unless you had any questions. That's one of my other paintings. If any of you are interested in taking a painting course, I'm teaching at South Avenue Arts. I teach an acrylic class, so that's an acrylic painting. But does anybody have any questions? Any comments? I did put little review things, and I have a box of pencils, and they do say happily ever after, because they were from my older daughter's, what was it, her bridal shower, Jen? Yeah, her bridal shower. So pencils if you need them. The only reason, I mean, you don't have to do the review, but it would just help, you know, if you